EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Thursday edition of Birds 365. Back in our normal time slot this morning with John McMullen. I'm Zander, Krause, your host of Birds 365. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Thursday morning, man, with training camp officially in our rearview mirror?
Taking a breath,
Yeah.
I'll say. Productive training camp, I think, from the Eagles' perspective. Certainly a good training camp for the quarterback, which is always important, to say the least. And I think you've seen some significant improvements on defense. So I think overall, despite the ups and downs of each day, I think overall it's been a pretty positive summer for the Eagles.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John. You did a good job. All your beat report, all the beat guys who were down there did a good job. It's a lot of work, I know that. So you guys definitely did good work. I thought overall it was a very positive camp for the Eagles. I don't know, that might just be me. With some Eagle-colored glasses on, you tell me from your perspective. Overall, you think it was a positive camp for this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think people know me. Some people call me a hater.
Yeah.
We're at that stage where everybody brings up old comments, evidently. So yeah. I mean, I'm not the one who's going to blow the cheerleading pom-poms up your you-know-what. So, I thought it was a good camp and a lot of work to do still. It doesn't end
No
when
doubt.
training camp stops, and they'll be right back to work today with a walkthrough. But I mean, they have to clean up some issues. They got to make some decisions, but I think they're where they expected to be, and that was they're going to have a very good offense. I think we all know that from the talent assembled. Talent is talent, and that will rise to the top. And then defensively, I think you're trying to get back to a manageable situation, and I think Vic Fangio is going to be able to do that for the Eagles. So doesn't mean there's not going to be troubles occasionally, but I think when you look at this team and hope springs eternal in baseball, they say, because spring training and football, this is the time of hope for the vast majority of teams. There's a few teams that know probably that they're not very good, but there's a lot of parity in this league, and the Eagles are probably in that group of 8 to 10 teams that if everything goes right, they could make a run at the Super Bowl.
No doubt about it. John, a month ago, we were not in training camp. What's changed for you after 16 practices that you've been at live and in person? 16 practices down. Where's your head on this team? And what's changed from what you thought it was a month ago? Or maybe it's not much at all, but what have been your biggest takeaways from the training?
Not much from a large picture perspective, because that's where I've been. I've constantly pretty much said from the spring that this offense is going to be good, just a matter of how good. And they were good last year. So I don't think that's changed, and I think that has more to do with the talent assembled. And defensively, I had mentioned when they hired Vic, I think he could immediately get them back to at least serviceable on defense. And that was before they added the Quinyon Mitchells and the Cooper DeJeans of the world, and they got better from a talent perspective in the defensive backfield. So not much has changed from a big picture perspective, I would say. From the smaller one, still have concerns about the setup. I mean, I just don't like it from the process of, look, everybody in the league knows the head coach has got to win to keep his job, and that's probably a pretty good perceptive viewpoint. And when that's the case, you always risk the when things go bad, I'll try to explain it like this. When things go bad in the NFL and the players don't think the coach is going to be there next year, it ain't good because they're like, you're not going to be here next year anyway.
Right.
And I never liked that setup. He's not literally a lame duck coach. That's why you never want to enter a season with a lame duck coach or a lame duck quarterback if you can prevent it. Sometimes on the field, sometimes your quarterback's just not good enough and you can't get one. So that eliminates some teams from that perspective, and you just got to persevere the best you can. But from a coaching standpoint, you never want a guy to enter with 1 year on his contract. That's a literal lame duck. The Eagles don't have that, but they have a figurative one because everybody knows if he doesn't reach some pretty significant expectations, that's going to be an issue for Jeffrey Lurie. So I don't like the setup. And then you have the kind of wrote about this week. You have certainly seems like you have the individual fiefdoms. Kind of does what he wants. Kellen kind of does what he wants. And, when you constantly talk about collaboration as the Eagles do, and you set up a system that way, doesn't seem very collaborative to me.
No, you're right. I mean, it's something we're going to have to watch all season long. I think you bring up a good point, and not many want to address that head on, but it is true. And I think from an objective point of view, you no doubt bring up good points that must be watched, and we will watch them all season long, and we will keep everybody up to date on where those relationships are and how that setup is working for the team this year. John, let me ask you about the coordinators. 2 new coordinators coming into the season this year. What were your takeaways from let's start with Kellen Moore. What were your takeaways from him through the first training camp you covered with Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator?
Very guarded, doesn't like to give you a lot that's off the field, obviously. So that isn't great for us, but we'll see. Maybe he's a little bit better behind the scenes. As if you listen to Shane Steichen, I say all the time on the podium, it was bad. And then off the podium is great. So we'll see how that shakes out. Some guys and it isn't their position to make overriding comments or flippant, because they're not in charge. The head coach is. And
it
then
plays back into what you just explained with the setup, with Nick and all those.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then from Vic's perspective, as advertised, as everybody says, he's got no filter, doesn't care. I love it. I can see why some of the people in Miami didn't love it. I question from the perspective of a newer generation of players if they're going to like it because they're used to being protected to a certain extent. And he's not going to protect people. So we'll see. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
And then Vic Fangio, John, what were your takeaway? I know he's been around a while, so obviously people know the kind of guy he is, but just covering it up close and personal, I believe it is your first time covering Vic Fangio. What did you see from Vic? What were your takeaways from him? Likes, dislikes? What did you see from Vic Fangio?
Well, just like I said, he's no filter. I mean, that's number one. So, I mean, I love it personally. I can see why some players don't love it. It's a newer generation, everybody talks about the old school mentality. He certainly has that. And guys have embraced it to date. Are they going to embrace it when, he's being honest in the regular season? I don't know. Some probably will, some probably won't, is the real answer. But breath of fresh air, certainly a heck of a football coach. I mean, you can see that. And you can see why everybody tries to copy him, and everybody has tried to copy him over the years. Very ahead of the game, very innovative despite his age. and has a willingness to change. Like, he realizes how many people have copied his defensive scheme, and he tries to evolve it. It's not going to change. Again, he's not going to turn into Wink Martindale like people want with the blitz. At least some people want. But he is going to, and he already has shifted certain things within the philosophy. But the goal remains the same: limit explosive plays and limit points, obviously. The most important stat, as he said, which is obvious, but I think people forget that at the end of the day. The goal is to limit as many points as possible in what is an offensive league. So when you're playing good offenses, like, people don't go in expecting to hold a top 5 offense to 10 points. They expect to hold them to a little bit under their average, and hopefully give your other side a chance to win a football game. And that's sort of, I think, where modern defense has changed a little bit. It's hard. In the old days, all those cliches were true. Defense travels, defense wins championships. Now it's more of, good offense is going to be good defense for the most part. And it's a little bit different, a little bit of an arena football vibe. Get a stop, get a key stop, win the game. When you're playing a really good offense.
Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. Agreed. That's why maybe Vic Fangio is keeping everything close to the vest, right? With his assistants and his head coaches. That was a funny comment. But I want to welcome everybody in this morning, John. We got a good crowd already in here this morning. Say Quads is in here. Twiz Jigga, Eduardo, Reza, Angelo, Cody K. Good morning, Cody. How you doing, brother? Crowley's in here. Terrence is in here. Rashid Mixon, Joe Whip, Angelo, Stephen, Pat, and Screwface. Appreciate everybody for being in here. Sorry if I missed you in the chat, but we appreciate you being here. Make sure you guys hit that like button this morning. Let's get some more likes for Johnny Mac. We had a big show yesterday on likes. So I think we got way up over 150 likes, John. By the way, we did hit it at the end there. Right when our outro was playing, we hit the 150 last night. So let's try and get the 150 again for our man Johnny Mac, who worked real hard at training camp and is now giving us the updates. John, let's go on the field. Speaking about the coordinators, what stuck out to you from the offense on the field on the Kellen Moore side? Anything different? Anything you didn't expect to see? What stood out to you in the first training camp with Kellen Moore's scheme on the offensive side of the ball?
It was as advertised. I don't know if it stood out. He's been around long enough to know what he's going to do as well. There's a long, not as long as Vic, but there's a long dossier on him as well. And he was hired for a reason. I always talk about the pendulum effect in the NFL. The Eagles didn't use motion, so now they're going to use motion. They were static offensively, so now they're not going to be static offensively. And he's going to be top 10 in motion where they were bottom 5 in motion. He's going to use more bunch sets. He's going to move players around a little bit more. Had a great play call to scheme open Kenny Gainwell at the goal line yesterday at practice. So, he's more focused on that, whereas the Eagles kind of defaulted to their talent level in the past. And maybe if you can mesh those two things together, you can become the greatest show on turf part 2. What I think a lot of people want to see. Just a really, by far, the most explosive offense in the NFL. And we'll see how it all meshes together. It's a difficult job. I've talked about it because of the expectations, because of the need to keep everyone happy. You almost the narrative of the interceptions with Jalen Hurts in training camp, went 15 practices with none, finally had one in the last practice. I think that sort of, in a way, even increases things more from the perspective of All right, now you want explosive plays and ball security. And sometimes those two don't go together at times. You got to take some chances to get explosive plays. So it's a difficult job for Kellen Moore. It really is. And again, that good problem thing. It is. I'd rather be Kellen Moore than, having some of these young quarterbacks and some of these crappy offenses. And, I'd rather be him than that. But he's got a different set of problems. You can call it rich man problems, whatever you want, but
Right.
there's still problems. There's still actual problems, and he's got to figure it out. And then there's, you can't control it, and that's the whole thing. And everybody, the minute you step into an NFL building, you're going to hear control what you can control within 10 minutes. I guarantee you. And you can't control injuries. And I'm a little bit concerned about the depth on the offensive side of the football, specifically wide receiver, tight end now, little bit of the offensive line. The only position I'm really comfortable at is running back, and to a certain extent, quarterback. Obviously, you don't want to lose your starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean,
But there aren't. I think a lot of people are down on Kenny Pickett, but there aren't a lot of good backups in the NFL. And all you want out of your backup, and I get that skewed in Philadelphia a little bit because of what happened, but all you want out of your backup typically is to be competitive if the catastrophe happens.
yeah, I think we've all gone a little too far with expecting if someone goes down at QB, Jalen Hurts, we're gonna have another Nick Foles on our hands. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think so. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, as long as you temper those expectations.
John, you talk about the expectations of the offense. What are your? I don't want to say what are your expectations, but what would you project this offense could be, and then where they might land? Like, do you think they have the upside potential to be the number one offense in the NFL, and then they might land at 5, or what do you think?
Oh yeah, they have the potential. They have the potential to be the best offense in the NFL. I would expect them to be top 5. That would be the expectation. The expectation. Where they were last year was 8th, 7th in points. That's probably a disappointment, as it was last year. Or will they be number 1 overall? Probably not. I mean, but I do expect them to be top 5. And they should be top 5.
Yeah, I
As
think
long
so too.
as the key people stay healthy.
Well, that's always
Yeah, that's
any
everywhere.
conversation you have. Yeah.
But I feel like you have to make that clear.
No, you do. But look, I mean, Kellen Moore has oversaw 2 top offenses in the league in the NFL so far. So he's obviously a coordinator that's capable of doing it. I believe he has the weapons this year to be able to do it again. So it'll be good to see. Waiting on Mike Gil. We'll talk to Mike Gil here in a couple minutes. And then in hour number 2, everybody will talk to Brandon Lee Gowton, who covered training camp up close and personal alongside John McMullen. So a good show planned today. 2 good guests. John, before we get to that break, I'll ask you the same thing on the defensive side of the ball on the field. Anything stick out to you on the field from what you saw from Vic Fangio?
Just his ability to use so many different looks and so many different combinations in certain situations, and that he's comfortable with it. And that comes back to the teaching part of it. Like, you can copy Vic all you want. Anybody can copy anybody today. Like, we talk about offenses and play calling, and everybody's so hyper focused on play calling. You can go on YouTube and find any play, anything, and copy it. That's not the key. The key is, can you teach it so the players are prepared to run it when you want to run it? And are you going to have the confidence in it to pull it out when you need to pull it out? Vic is very good at teaching and preparing and getting guys ready so we can pull off all these different unique looks in certain situations. That's his strength, is the preparation and the teaching, and getting guys prepared, so we can utilize all these different looks. A lot of times you'll see teams struggling defensively and they immediately scale back to simple cover 2, because guys can't do anything else. So you just make it as simple for them as possible and hope they can play as fast as possible, and you can put something serviceable out there. You're going to see so many different looks. He's rolling out the blitz looks everybody was talking about. He was rolling out this weird front where Patrick Johnson was an extra edge rusher and Zach Bond was the only linebacker on the field. Actually, Patrick, by labeling, would have been the second one. He's throwing that out on the 15th, 16th day of training camp. And he's gonna keep rolling. If he finds a player can do something, Jalix Hunt, we would say, maybe he can't do anything but go straight ahead right now. But if he can utilize it on 3rd and 13, he'll do it. So I think that's the best part of Vic Fangio.
Yeah, going to be fun to watch all season long. Good breakdown there from John McMullen on the two coordinators. Let's get to our first commercial break. I see our man Mike Gil in the green room, John. We even talked to Mike in a little bit with the janky schedule of training camp. So it's going to be good to get Mike Gil up, get his thoughts on training camp, Vic, Kellen, and the whole 9 yards. So we'll do that coming up next on Birds 365. Mike Gil. Stay tuned, everybody.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your greenhouse? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles. EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Thursday's edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Mike Gil from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well. Good to see you, Mike. We haven't talked. Well, you and I talk every day, but we haven't talked on this show. What's the feeling you get from your audience? Where are they with this Eagles team? Up or down? Now that we're at officially the end of training camp.
Up or down is interesting. We had like a big kumbaya yesterday on my show. You know, I was off for 10 days, so I kind of missed the Baltimore and New England game. I just got back Monday. Was my
You didn't miss much,
back.
Mike.
No. I'll tell you, the distraction of the Phillies and what's going on over there is certainly, something here. But we asked a question, and I think I had you on Monday and asked about which coordinator will make a bigger impact on this team. And a lot of people went with Kellen Moore. I think it ended up being like 70-30 split.
People love offense. It's insanity, right? By the way, which I told you.
And then yesterday, we were looking at, a lot of different power rankings around. And I said, look, they're in the top 5 pretty much at every power ranking. Are we not giving this team enough credit for their ceiling of what they should be? Like, should we be entering the year less trepidatious and being like, this is a Super Bowl team? And I think people feel trepidatious still based on the final 7-game sample of last year, that they're unwilling to just take their guard down and say, you know what? This team is really good. This is a really good team. I don't think people are there yet. I think they want to see something tangible that makes them feel that this team is really good. So I feel that the word would be a little trepidatious about this team.
Yeah, I think it goes. I think it's about the collapse last year, Mike, because I think about it. If they're 10-1 this year, people are going to say, well, they were 10-1 last year. Yeah. I until they get over that. Yeah, I think there's going to be a certain amount of trepidation.
Yeah, and I don't know
most people. I think that's fair. By the way,
that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know if it's fair. Just that was so rare. Like, I don't think you say, "Oh, that's going to happen again."
Right, but
the interesting part is, and I brought the Phillies up, is they're going through a streak right now where people are trying to figure out: is it the bullpen? Is it the pitching? Is it the offense is cold? Well, it's Rob Thompson's fault. Like, there is a disconnect between the issue with the Phillies, similar to what happened with the Eagles. No one can really definitively say that's why. I think the Eagles told you, we think our coordinators weren't strong enough. We went out and replaced the coordinators, definitively said that was an issue for us. They're no longer here. And then, of course, they added some pieces. But I think they're telling you, we went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago with really strong coordinators. We're going to go back to that. We're going to get 2 strong coordinators. We went with 2 inexperienced guys, and it didn't work. We're going to go back to what got us there. So I think the Eagles kind of identified what they thought the problem was, but I think the fans still were kind of like, what the heck happened? It was such an odd thing.
Yeah. And I don't even think they know. I don't even think they
maybe know at least it appears that there's something there, right?
Well, yeah, I mean they've made it clear. You're right, Mike. You look at actions, not words, and they made it clear what the problem was, and in their mind, what the problem was with the coordinators. But you bring up an interesting thing, and I call it the pendulum effect. I already said that, and they go to the veteran coordinators. Vic's been around since the 40s, and Kellen's been doing it for a long time, even though he's a young guy. But I mean, and you mentioned the other part. They had good coordinators. Well, some people thought they had good coordinators, at least one good coordinator. But I will say this, Mike. They were both inexperienced.
Yeah.
When they got here.
Yeah. Britton Covey at the Super Bowl had told me, he said, I think we probably would have been better off with a more experienced, play caller or coordinator, somebody who had no, that's a tough one though, because I still, that whole situation, it's a whole nother show in itself. Is Brian Johnson is the coordinator of an offense that he doesn't run. They're not his plays.
I know
who succeeds in that role. I mean, Hey, here's my playbook. Call my
Shane
plays for it.
Shane Steichen succeeded.
All right. So Shane Steichen succeeded in that role. Well, Brian Johnson, obviously, it's not like to me, that's a tough spot to be in. Call my plays.
Yeah.
How do you guy based on that?
Head coaches, most offensive head coaches call their own plays. So,
Right.
And most of them have coordinators. So it's just a different style of job. But you're right. I mean, most guys are going to call plays and that's why, a lot of people don't like CEO coaches because they're worried about losing the play calling. Hey, but yeah, Mike, I've said play calling's so overrated. It's just ridiculous. I mean, first of all, it always, in good times, in bad times, in different times, average times, mediocre times, whatever times, it's always the players first. Always, always, always. Now, yeah, coaching in football is more important than the other sports. I don't think there's any question about that. And they can have a larger impact. Vic talked about that. That's one of the reasons he's a big baseball guy. And we asked him early on, why don't you get involved in baseball? He's like, he was a coach and he was coaching different sports when he was young. And he was like, you have more of an impact in football. So it's more interesting to me. So they do have more of an impact than other sports. But at the end of the day, and you saw it with Bill Belichick at the end, you can be the best coach in the history of the world. And if you don't have players, you're not going to win. And you know that even on the youth level.
Yeah, we say that in every sport. I laugh because in Philly, we love to fall back to it's Rob Thompson's fault. It's Doc Rivers' fault. It's Brett Brown's fault. And I always say, look, those guys have a small hand in it, but they are low on my list. The football coach is higher on the list, but still players first. Greg Popovich was universally the best coach in the NBA. It wasn't even a question. Who's the best coach in the NBA? Greg Popovich. Well, then you took Tim Duncan and Tony Parker and that crew away from him. His name doesn't come up very often anymore when you ask who the best coaches in the NBA.
He's still probably one of the best coaches.
Right.
But you can't tell because
you don't have the players.
Win.
Now,
yeah.
In football, I think the coach does, but there's a lot of football coaches who have won, and you don't think of them as great coaches. Brian Billick, he won a Super Bowl and never returned to the. Nobody hired him again. He vanished, just went away. Like
Barry Switzer, I would say.
Barry Switzer won a Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Look, I definitely think getting the new coordinators in here should make this team more consistent. The defense last year, the last 7 weeks of the year was you never saw anything like it. It was just so bad. There had to be so many issues on that side of the ball internally of what was happening. The messaging, was just horrendous. You never saw anything like it. The secondary was so bad. Teams were just getting plods and chunks of yards. You shouldn't see that as much anymore. The offense, we talk about it all the time. They were still a top 10 offense. But I contend that they never had a game where you're like, wow, this is a well-oiled machine. Like, this is just, how are you going to stop this team? And that's what you thought going into the year. Brown and Smith and Goddard, and then they went and got DeAndre Swift. Well, now you have Saquon Barkley. How are you going to stop this offense should be the question going into every single week. And I think you're going to get back to that.
Agreed, Mike Gil. We'll see what ends up happening. With that, you talk about the defense and how bad they were down the stretch last year. I think we're all excited for Vic Fangio and what he can bring. But, Mike, 16 practices deep in training camp now. Training camp officially in the rear view, at least from our point of view. You think they got enough guys in this defense? You think they're good enough on the defensive side of the ball to be what they need to be this year for this team to compete for a Super Bowl?
I have questions about the pass rush. I wasn't a big fan of the swap. Look, Hassan Reddick's production is going to be tough to duplicate. Can Bryce Huff replace Reddick, or is it going to take multiple people to get there? Now, much like I'll go back to the Phillies, they got off to this rip-roaring start where they were on pace to win 114 games. Why? You had multiple guys in the Cy Young race. You had multiple relievers make the All-Star game. They came out of nowhere. Matt Strahm, Jeff Hoffman, you didn't think they were going to be all-stars. Who on the Eagles on the defensive side of the ball is going to be someone you didn't think they were going to be? And if that happens, then yeah, I think their defense has a chance. But without that happening, the expectations going in, I don't know. What's Nolan Smith? Is he a guy who can actually get to the quarterback, pressure him, be a factor? Can Bryce Huff be a replacement, a suitable enough replacement, or even a better player than what Hassan Reddick was? The linebackers, John, you came on Monday and waxed poetically about Nakobe Dean. Now you got everybody all excited. Thanks for that. And Ross Tucker had his little comment yesterday saying, "Oh, we shouldn't even be worried about the linebackers anymore. They're really good." I'm like,
yeah, I'm not going down Ross's avenue.
Ross
I told you that.
Right there. He went Eagle Homer there for sure.
Yeah. So what are those linebackers? Is there a steady Eddie in that linebacking core? And I say steady Eddie. I think TJ Edwards was better than a steady Eddie, but is there a guy in that linebacking core that can really pull this whole defense together? I think that's what Edwards and White did such a good job a couple of years ago. They pulled the whole thing together. They weren't playmakers. They weren't making like interceptions and sacks. They just pulled everything together. They did their job, and that team got to a Super Bowl. I don't know if I can expect that from this defense and the linebackers. And then, at the corners, you got Rodgers, who hasn't played football in a year. He's had a great camp from all accounts and done everything. You've got two young rookies out there. Is that other side from Darius? And by the way, Darius Slay, is he going to be the guy who has the year where he takes a step back all of a sudden? He's starting to get up there at an age where at a position where age is not your friend. So I think there's just too many questions on that side of the ball to think that the defense is going to be able to be a really good defense, but the potential is there. No question about it.
I hear you about Slay, because anytime you see a corner at 33, you start to say, the descent is coming, and it is coming. But I got to tell you, man, he just yesterday, I mean, he's so smart, such a smart football player, so savvy. Completely baited Jalen Hurts into that first interception. I mean, it was the classic. He's done it so many times. I've seen him at practice. He will literally bait the quarterback and just sit and wait, and you can see it develop. And that's what he did. And it was a late throw over the middle, and bang, he's there for the interception. He's a guy who I think when he's gone, people will start to realize, wow, that guy was pretty good. And people in Detroit knew it after he left. I think people in Philadelphia are going to realize it. But you're right about the 33 aspect of it. To me, it's we were talking to Rodgers this week. He had mentioned the biggest issue about sitting out was his weight. He got down under 180 pounds.
How do you lose weight by not working? Give me that one.
He's a cornerback. I know people like you and I can't understand it, but he's a cornerback, and he was a young man. He's a very slight guy to begin with. And that's my concern about Isaiah Rodgers. And that's why everybody looks at him and projects him into the slot, because he's so small. How is he going to hold up outside against these big, monstrous receivers that everybody seems to have outside the numbers in the NFL these days? That's my concern about Isaiah Rodgers. He can play, but I don't know if he can hold up long term because of the size issues.
Well, I think I brought it up with you yesterday. Avonte Maddox was a pretty good slot player on this team. I mean, when he played, he was good. He just couldn't stay on the field. And the fact that they have pretty much taken him out of the mix at that position, I guess, tells you how comfortable they are with that other group of guys. Because quite frankly, if Maddox is healthy, he was pretty good in the slot.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And that's about, they drafted Quinyon, they drafted Cooper. So, I mean, they're going to play him. Now, hopefully they develop, and everything's been positive with Quinyon Mitchell. That doesn't mean there's not going to be issues. He's got the good cornerback mentality. He seems to forget bad reps quickly and goes back, and he wants to compete against A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. All good indications from Quinyon Mitchell. But he's going to get beat. And, people are going to say, oh, we got beat, Mike Gil. They're going to call you up and text you and say, what's going on? Quinyon Mitchell got beat by insert name of great receiver. Gets beat every day at practice. That's the nature of cornerback. Are you going to be able to come back from that, have the short memory?
Well, and then I guess the other thing we can throw into the mix in this conversation is, did Cooper DeJean missing all that time set him back so much that he's not going to be a big enough factor right away?
I'll tell you. I don't worry about the missing the time aspect nearly as much as he's playing a new position, which I think nobody realizes. Because all the talk about Cooper DeJean was, oh, he's going to be a slot, he's going to be a safety. And all he played at Iowa was outside corner, and that's what he's used to. 90+% of his snaps were at outside corner, and that's what the Eagles scouted him as. And now they want to play him in the slot. And the other day when he was out there against Britton Covey, the short area quickness guy, it wasn't good. It was not good. Those little jitterbugs in the middle of the field was not good.
Yeah.
And he's not used to it. He's a big guy for a corner. So that I'm more worried about projecting him to that particular position than the hamstring. I think the hamstring is going to be a blip on the radar. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Those things are tough.
Yeah, well, they're tough, and he's a fast guy as well. They're always tough for fast guys, but he's smart. I mean, from a mental standpoint, I don't think it's an issue for him catching up and doing all that stuff. But he's learning a new position, and I think most people don't realize that. He's barely played it.
We'll see what Cooper DeJean does. Mike, I want to ask you about the historic training camp of Jalen Hurts, 305 completion or attempts with no interception. What's your expectation for Jalen Hurts coming into the year, Mike?
Historic.
The more historic part is the guy who actually watched all 300+ passes and like took note of that and didn't miss one.
That's historic. Elliot, right? Shout out to Elliot.
Got to give Elliot credit, Mike.
Oh, Elliot. I'm sorry, I was away. I'm like out of.
Well, we love to joke about it, but I laugh because every show I listen to right now talks about the dang training camp.
Yeah, but there's a group that take it seriously, and we make fun of that group at least.
Well, it became a thing, definitely. I just you watch how many in a row is it?
305, Mike.
Right. So he saw all Elliot Shore Parks. Saw all 305 throws. I think that's the more historic number. No, it's pretty impressive.
I can tell you, no, Elliot will pay attention to every pass, and he will come to it, because that's the thing about training camp. Like the Eagles actually have a big video board, and they actually have the replays of the plays now, which is the first year they've done that. But there's a lot of times you can't see certain things. There's a lot of times a referee will blow a play dead, and it might be a sack. A lot of people were saying yesterday his interception should have been a sack, which would wipe out the interception if they had called the sack. So there's a lot of, sometimes there was a couple times when people thought Johnny Wilson caught the football, and all of a sudden Michael Clay's behind him going, oh no, he bobbled that. And a lot of people didn't notice that. And they count that as a completion.
Well, that's what I mean. I haven't been to camp since the Nova. I was at Lehigh was the last time I was at a camp. So up there just seems like it would be so hard to like. There's so much distraction going on. Are you watching?
It is. It's extremely hard. And Elliot, if he misses a play, he'll go up to people. He'll go up to me. He'll go up to other people and say, "What happened there? Did you see it? What?" So he does the best job possible. But, and I say it all the time, Elliot's a great guy. Love him as a friend. It's stupid. It's stupid.
Look, 305 passes. If there was something missed in there, God bless him. But Sirianni said something yesterday that I said a lot in 2022, which is he's making all the right decisions.
Yeah.
In 2022, it felt like every play he made the right read, on an RPO. If he was supposed to hand it off to Sanders, he handed it to Sanders. If he was supposed to pull it from Sanders, he pulled it from Sanders and ran it himself. If he was supposed to pull it and run, he ran. If he was supposed to pull it and throw, he found the right receiver. It felt that he made the right read and decision almost every single play the entire season. Like it was uncanny that we were like, man, this guy makes the right decision every single time. Last year, it felt like he made the wrong decision every time. Hey, you could have handed it off to him and said you held it yourself. You could have pulled it and ran. Maybe he doesn't want to run. Oh, he pulled it and there was a guy open and he missed him. It was just so clunky compared to the year before, where it was such a well-oiled machine. So Sirianni says yesterday, hey, he's making all the right decisions. The offense, look, I have high expectations for the offense and Jalen. I think we're going to see a big year from both. I think this offense is going to be a special offense. I had a guy who texted my show. I wish he left his name. I'd give him more credit, but he didn't. And he said, listen, this offense, it shouldn't be one of the top 5 in the league. This should be one of a historic offense. We should be talking about like a historic offense.
That to me is so unrealistic.
Well, listen, with the personnel on this team, it might not be like, okay, are they the greatest show on turf? Are they one of these like all-timers? Why not? You got Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, a really, really good offensive line, a guy who was second in the MVP award. Why shouldn't you have an offense that's special?
Because
what's holding them back
it's
from
not,
that?
and that's, Zander asked that at the start of the show. It's not like that's not the ceiling. And I mentioned the greatest show on turf. That might be the ceiling. But historic is historic, Mike. That doesn't happen every year. So many things, the stars have to align. That's what I'm saying. If you have those expectations, as your texter did, you got to temper it a little bit.
That's fair. Look, to say that you have to be a historic offense, otherwise you're a failure, I understand. Those expectations are probably unattainable. But I asked the question with the personnel on this offense, why should we not think that that's a possibility?
Oh, it's a ceiling that, but that's like the 70 sack season, right? You and I would have that discussion. I don't care if Jonathan Gannon came back and they didn't have the issues and they were able to have the same group and they brought the exact same group back. They were not getting 70 sacks again.
No.
They were not.
Listen, last year when they played the 49ers, at that point, what were you, 10-1 or 10-2 entering that game? And, you got this matchup with the Niners. And everybody talks about the Niners offense and how smooth and crisp it looks. And I said, if you were to ask somebody to pick 2 receivers for their team, would you take Ayuk and Stebo or Smith and Brown? I mean, you might take the other 2, but it's not definitive. No spot on the roster was there a definitive player on San Francisco where you would say maybe Trent Williams and obviously Christian McCaffrey. But now you have Barkley. You still might take McCaffrey, but there is no definitive guy where you're like, I'm taking miles between the 2 players, right?
No, I would take AJ and Devontae before I would take.
There you go. And the Eagles' offensive line, probably player for
overall
player.
Better. Yeah, player for player is better.
Just as good, if not better. Line. So San Francisco's offense runs way smoother last year than Philly's.
Yeah, well, they have a better coach. They have the best play caller in the business. And that, guess what? Kellen Moore's not going to be Kyle Shanahan. Not the best head coach. Best, people talk about schemer. I shouldn't have said play caller. Schemer, I would say. He's got his guys prepared. He's better than everybody else. He's the Vic Fangio of offense. Everybody tries to copy him. He's the best in the business.
Yeah.
And it's about preparation more than anything else.
Well, and that's why my point is last year, the team had the talent to be there with a San Francisco offensively. They did not have the full Monty, which would be the preparation, the play calling, all of that. Now you're hoping that Moore closes that gap so that you look more like that than what you looked like last year.
Yeah, and I think the ceiling is the number one offense in the NFL. They have the potential to be the number one offense in the NFL. But to expect that, then you're just setting yourself up for disappointment because so many things have to go right.
Yeah. Well, listen, we set expectations based on the talent that you have. And if you don't meet them, that means the talent didn't get there. This offense has the talent that it should be one of the top 2 offenses in the league. Who has better overall talent than what this crew has?
There's a few teams in the conversation, like
Detroit. I like Detroit. I think Detroit's got really
Detroit's in the conversation.
everywhere.
San Francisco's obviously in the conversation. Kansas City's in the conversation.
The Jets had a better offensive line. That's a pretty good team.
The Jets evidently destroyed the Giants' season in a joint practice. Everybody's jumping off bridges who covers the Giants and follows the Giants. The Jets are going to be good if Aaron is healthy.
Yep.
They're going to be very good.
Miami's got some good skill players. Their offensive line's okay.
Yeah, there's a group of teams that are powerful offensively that could have, those types of years. But Miami's a good example. Like Miami's offensive success, and there's a lot of it, is very hollow to me. In the stats that they seem like a front running team. Like when everything's going well, they're chucking the football down the field to Tyreek. They're scoring 70 points. And the minute there's a little bit of adversity, they kind of fall apart. So there's different levels. Like, do you have the potential to score 70 points? They do. Can the Eagles score 70 points? I don't know if they're that explosive. People are talking about they got to check it down. Well, if you're checking it down, you're not slinging a football and running up the score with Tyreek Hill. So it's kind of like depending on, what you want. What's your favorite flavor of offense?
All right. I'm in the I'll be I know to say 30 points, like 28.8 would be my number a week.
That's big.
That's big, but I like it. I think that's a pretty good number.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, to say someone's going to
very good offense, just a matter of how good. That's what I say. It's a very good offense, just a matter of how good.
Yep.
And Kellen Moore's under those expectations, so he's got a lot of expectations to deal with. Just like Mike Gil does every day at Mike Gil Show, back from vacation, 97.3 The Sports Bash. Every afternoon, 2 to 6. What are Kaplan, Mosher, and DeCecco? What are they most excited about? What are they worried about on your way out the door?
We talked a lot yesterday. I mean, I've been away for 10 days, so I haven't heard a lot of the after game and training camp stuff. But yesterday you and I kind of went through 53 potentials. Mosher and I talked a little bit more about the coordinators. He's concerned about the defense, the linebackers still. He said, look, as many people have, they have one of the worst linebacking rooms in the league. I'll talk to Andrew today. I haven't talked to him in 2 weeks. And Adam and I on Tuesday did more of a overview of what's going on in the division. So, but yeah, the defense seems to be the question still of the linebackers. Mosher also talked about the pass rush. Are they getting consistent pass rush? Where's that coming from? Because I brought that up. I said, I don't know that are we not talking enough about where's this consistent pass rush coming from? Because when they got the 70 sacks, I know you're not a big sack guy. Okay, they got a lot of pressure and it caused turnovers. Last year, not enough pressure, not enough turnovers. Are they getting enough pressure, forget sacks, to cause the turnovers that they were able to get 2 years ago? And I don't know where that's coming from consistently. Maybe here and there. I don't know. I'm not hearing enough about what Bryce Huff's role is going to be. Is he going to have a big role in this defense? Nolan Smith seems to be the guy everybody likes, but I don't know what kind of roles he's going to have. So those are some of the things that we've been kind of looking at on the defensive side of the ball with those guys. But 4:00 football at 4.
Good stuff, Mike Gil. Appreciate you being here on this Thursday, normally a Wednesday appearance from you, but we got a Thursday one out of you today. We appreciate you doing it. You always improve our show. Thanks, Mike. We'll talk to you soon. All right, man.
All right, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Mike.
There's Mike Gil joining us on Birds 365. Good stuff from Mike Gil. We'll get another commercial break. We have Brandon Lee Gowton coming up in hour number 2. So a good show plan. We'll hit our next break. I want to encourage everybody to hit that like button. We're at 72 likes, 350 in the chat. Come on, everybody. I need some likes for Johnny Mack, who worked hard down at training camp for us to give us all the input, all the knowledge, and all the updates on this football team. So smash that like button. Let's try and get to 150 likes today. John, before I hit the break, by the way, I wanted to hit this. A super chat we got from Daniel Bigelow. I didn't have a chance to bring it up with Mike, but we'll hit it now. Daniel says, last year we won those 10 games by 1 score. Very shaky. I will have trepidation unless we are winning these games by 15 to 20 points. Daniel, I think you're going to have trepidation all year long.
This is the NFL, man. Yeah. It's not with Zander. We'll give deference to Zander. It's not Alabama Furman. Most NFL teams have pretty good players. And a lot of games are going to be 1-score games, especially with obviously the 2-point conversion now mixed in. So you got to be, as you mentioned, 2-score games late. Even the great teams don't have a ton of them. Obviously they have more, but the whole league is defined on parity. So if you go back to the Super Bowl season, early, people forget week 1, they almost lost at Ford Field to a bad Detroit team. Now, I remember talking to Jody about that. I said, that's a tough spot because it's going to be loud. It was extremely loud. I remember how loud that game was. People in Detroit get excited early in the season, then they tend to get crappy, and they would, back then, they would kind of waver, so you wanted to play them late. I would always tell Jody that. He was like, sure enough, they were holding on for dear life, and they were able to win that game. The Jacksonville game, they were down 2 scores in that game. You remember that bad weather game with and Trevor Lawrence kind of fell apart late. They went out to Arizona. They should have lost that game. That was the backup. That was the battle of the backup kickers. The Eagles had the better backup kicker, Cameron Dicker, the kicker versus Matt Amendola.
I actually think he's still in the league now, John, isn't he?
Yeah. He was at the Chargers doing a good job. They had the better backup kicker. Cowboys game was close. They lost to the Commanders. Indianapolis, remember the Indianapolis game? They were losing that game, and that was the 4th quarter. Jalen Hurts put him on his shoulders and ran the football down. I think they won that game by a point, 17-16. Green Bay was 1 touchdown. Obviously they blew out the Giants. That Chicago game in that freezing Soldier Field where Jalen Hurts got hurt, that was a close game. Ended up being a close game. Dallas, obviously, New Orleans, they lost, and the Giants was 1. I mean, people don't remember. It ain't easy in this league. That's the Super Bowl season.
Yeah. Daniel, I love you, brother. I appreciate the super chat, but I wouldn't expect to win most of the games by 15 to 20 points this year. But appreciate your super chat. Appreciate your viewership, Daniel. I see you in here all the time. So we appreciate your support of the channel. Let's hope the Eagles have a good year this year. Let's get to our commercial break. We'll have another segment, and then we'll have BLG in hour number 2. Stay tuned, everybody, on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Thursday's edition of Birds 365. August 22nd, training camp officially in the rearview mirror. Everybody can't believe it. Came and went, Johnny Mac. A good couple of weeks of work, or almost a month of work for you guys, working hard to get down there. What does the schedule now look like for this team as we lead up to September 6th?
Yeah, it didn't go quick for me. They're having a walkthrough today, walkthrough tomorrow. Saturday's the final preseason game against Minnesota. Players are off Sunday. Monday, they're not going to practice. Typically, they would, but the Brazil game kind of makes things a little bit nutty the next week. So they're giving the guys an extra day. Plus, that's cut down day coming Tuesday. So you have a bunch of guys who sort of know they're on their way out practicing, which is always awkward. So they're going to skip that this year. And then Tuesday will be cut down day. So that's sort of the rest of that group. And then they'll get back on the practice field Wednesday of next week. So, and then you'll be down to the 53 in the practice squad by that point. So you'll have the indication of the starting point, which I always say, one of my pet peeves, initial 53, not the final 53.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We'll see how the rest of this training camp progresses. We're not going to be able to cover it. So what is your access? Like next Wednesday they have practice. What's your access? The locker room will open Sunday, I think, before the and this is all just sort of penciled in, not in concrete. Sunday before the Brazil game. So the game's Friday. They're going to leave Wednesday. So they're going to have some kind of access, probably Sunday, Monday at least. But we'll see how that shakes out. But that's when the locker room is going to open. But yeah, we get players every day after practice. So it's the same. It's the same as
in a lot of ways, the access to the players is better when the locker room opens, but it's the same from the standpoint of access to the players and coaches on practice days. The only difference is we don't get to watch the entire practice. We only get to watch the first 20, 25 minutes of practice. That's the only difference.
Good stuff, Johnny Mac. I'm going to ask you, John, the same question that Mike Gil was posing yesterday on his show. I thought it was a good one. Who has a bigger impact on this team, I think was how he worded it. Kellen Moore or Vic Fangio? Who has a bigger role or a bigger impact on their side of the ball?
Yeah, and his poll, he asked his listeners, and his poll was heavily Kellen Moore, and I kind of chuckled at that. I mean, people like offense. That's what it comes down to.
No, you're right. But John, don't you think? Because I agree, you're right. People do like offense, but hasn't the NFL kind of shoved it down their throat? Like they're legislating the defensive physicality out of the game. Like everything is tailored to the offense.
We're talking about this specific team. It's no doubt it's an offensively driven league.
Yeah.
Offense is more important, but that to me is a different conversation. The offense here was already good. It didn't meet people's expectations. The defense was a disaster.
Right.
And Bick's in to fix the disaster. Kellen's in to make the pretty girl even prettier.
Yeah, right.
All right, great.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
He's got the tougher job by a wide margin. And yeah, he's more important because you got to get to a certain level to be where you want to go. The offense is going to be better than the defense. And if they're not, Kellen Moore's going to be out of here really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, that kind of poll, and I get why Mike does it. I mean, he's trying to engage, but it's always going to tilt towards the offense because people are more interested in offense by and large, even though people will say Philadelphia and the Delaware Valley is a defensive city. They're just like everybody else. They like stats and offense and numbers, and we constantly talk about it. What's Saquon going to get? What's AJ going to get? What's Devontae going to get? And occasionally they'll throw in Bryce Huff's got to get so many sacks, but it's usually sacks or, turnovers, interceptions, that type of thing.
Good stuff, John. We'll see, what ends up happening with this team. How good can this defense be, though, this year? Like we talk about, why Vic would have a bigger role or a bigger impact because it is harder to turn that defense around. And I thought you phrased it nicely with making the prettier girl prettier. Vic is trying to put lipstick on a pig, but how good can he get it? And how what's the ceiling on the defense? We know the ceiling on the offense is best in the league. What's the ceiling on this defense?
Yeah, I think it's relatively high, but I think I would put the ceiling at probably 12, 13 in the NFL, somewhere in that range. But they've added significant talent in the secondary. It's all got to come together. It's all young. It's all unproven. But you've gotten better physical gifts with the players. Speed was a big issue with this team last year in the secondary and the back seven as a whole. And now they got, Quignon and Cooper and Slay can still run and CJ's back and he can run. So they've improved that. The one thing Devin can do is run. So they've improved the athleticism standpoint. And you got to get them up to speed, but there's not a better guy to get them up to speed than Vic Fangio, I would say, from a preparation standpoint. And that's why I want the young guys on the field. And I'm willing to live through the growing pains. I know they're coming, and I think the Eagles know they're coming. And so what? You persevere, and then they get better when you want to be better. Because the goal is not to be 10-1. The goal is to be playing your best football as you hit the playoffs and then potentially making a run.
Yeah, we'll see what they can do. I got concerns, obviously, about some of those positions on defense. But overall, I thought, I will say one of my takeaways from training camp, I think the defense was, at least some of the certain spots, performed better than I thought they would, linebacker namely. But, John, I was asking the question yesterday. Like we say, Nakobe Dean looks good, at least the best linebacker on this football team.
Yeah, and that's the definition that everyone misses. It's a bottom 5 linebacker room.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like he's the best on the Eagles, but that's a crappy linebacker room. Is he good at all by NFL standards?
I think he's got a chance to be good. A chance.
Middle of the pack.
Yeah, I always say he's not Fred Warner. I'm not comparing him to Fred Warner. I think he's got potential to be a good NFL linebacker. And maybe even more than that. But I think there's got to be steps. Yeah, maybe he turns into a good starter next year, this upcoming season. And then next season, maybe he's in the conversation for being, a top 20 linebacker. I think that's his ceiling as a player. That's his ceiling when he was coming out of Georgia. And everybody thought he was such a steal in the 3rd round. But, he's got to there's stages to that. And some people hit the ground running. That obviously has not been him. This is his 3rd year. A lot of guys, Brandon Graham, most notably, nobody learned from Brandon Graham. Not everybody hits the ground running from immediacy. Some people do.
Feels like it's a different era of football now, though. And you hear Tom Brady talk about it with the quarterbacks, the expectations on these players.
Yeah, the expectations are a thing. It's ridiculous.
I know, but in the past, like it was not uncommon for a rookie to come into the league and take some time to get up to speed. Now it's not like that as much anymore, where people, instant gratification. Yeah. That's the world we live in, the social media, the scrolling and everything. And that's our world. So
it's our world. I think I would argue more than that as talk show hosts. It's our world more than their world. They don't have to play into it. Do they have to deal with some of it? Yeah, but what?
Play into it though. I do.
Well, they see me every day. The Eagles, They can say McMullen's an idiot, blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Who cares? Ultimately, it doesn't matter what I say.
Right.
It matters what they do. And they don't have to let those expectations change the way they do business. And by the way, I'm not picking on the Eagles because this is the entire NFL and what Tom was talking about, what Tom Brady was talking about. Just because everybody expects insert name of young quarterback to be on the field early doesn't mean you have to do it. Even recently, Green Bay was patient with Jordan Love. It looks like they've got a really good quarterback. And sometimes it's the necessity. If you see what happened and, Brock Purdy got his opportunity because of injuries in San Francisco and seized it. But more often than not, if you're throwing a quarterback on the field or any player, it's just most notable because everybody pays so much attention to the quarterbacks. More often than not, if you just throw a guy in the deep end of the pool, it's not going to be great early. Now, a lot of guys will persevere and get incrementally better, especially if they have the mental toughness to handle it. And that's why I'm so excited about Quinyon Mitchell, because it looks like he's got the mental toughness to handle what's coming. And what's coming is he's going to get beat, and he's going to get beat for touchdowns. And people are going to go, what the hell's wrong with Quinyon Mitchell? Not understanding, it might be CD Lamb or whatever down the road.
Right.
But I think what happened in Kansas City's got a chance to happen here. And all of a sudden, these guys learn from their mistakes and they're talented and they get better and better and better. and all of a sudden you really got something. But yeah, the expectations are a real thing. And they're certainly a real thing around this team because they collapsed under him last year.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's what, by the way, just that point on Quignon, you bring up a good point. That's what I love about the fact that he's going up against AJ and Devontae, though, because, if he is thrown into the fire this year, he's going to play some good receivers. We got the Bengals, we got the Ravens on the schedule, we got the Cowboys twice. I mean, even the Commanders, they have solid receiving core. There's a lot of teams that we're playing this year that have good receivers. So Quignon being able to go up against AJ and Devontae on a daily basis, I think will prepare him for that better than anything else could.
Yeah, it's great. And people should have bring that same mindset with Bryce Huff, as I've often said.
That's a good point. You're spot on. 2 good tackles he's got to go up against every day.
Yeah. And people seem to realize it with Quignon. They don't seem to realize it with Bryce. I don't know, maybe because he's a veteran, maybe because he's getting paid $50 million. So maybe that changes it.
That probably has something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps. And Bryce just mentioned that again the other day. It's like, and he's not going to be going against Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. And, Slay mentioned that about Quignon. He's not going to be going against AJ and Devontae on a consistent basis. There's a lot of good receivers in the NFL, but on a consistent basis. Yeah. And, it's only going to make you better when you do that.
No doubt. Speaking of Lane Johnson, John, did you hear his comments yesterday down at practice on 2 to 3 years left at least? He says he could play till like Whitworth if he really wanted. 40, I don't think he wants to. But physically, I think he does make a good point. The guy looks pretty incredible for a 30. I think is he 34 now, Lane?
34.
34.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Lane's one of those guys, man. Yeah. You're gonna miss him when he's gone.
Yeah, he's
multiple reasons. Yeah, he's a Hall of Fame player. I don't even think there's any question about it. It's interesting because he's been around so long. It just in his tenure in the league, and this is year 11 or 12, somewhere in that range. So, just over a decade in the league. The league has changed so much. Back, like right tackles were thought as lesser than left tackles when he came into the league. It's one of the reasons when he got drafted to be a left tackle. For people that don't know, he's a left tackle at Oklahoma. And they were going to start him out at right tackle, move him to left tackle when Jason Peters would eventually retire. And it kept going and going and going. And eventually he got so good at right tackle, Stoutland is like, well, I'm not moving him. He's too good there. And he's become the player's become. But the league has shifted to where the best pass rusher was always on the weak side, which generally with right-handed quarterbacks is the left tackle and the blind side. And that's where you would always put your best pass rusher. But as the league when it became a league of the offensive changes, became a league of you either get the quarterback or you get to the quarterback. So that's how you play defense. You have to affect the quarterback, because if he's got time to throw, he's going to pick you apart. Good quarterbacks. And it shifted so much that people made a big emphasis on getting multiple pass rushers. And all of a sudden you have all these guys like Micah and Von Miller and Nick Bosa, and they'll line up predominantly on the strong side, and they'll move around, but predominantly. And so all of a sudden Lane Johnson's against all these great pass rushers and he's shutting them down. Just man, if it's possible be as good as him and people realize and still be underrated, that's Lane Johnson.
Good stuff there from Johnny Mack. I see BLG in our waiting room. Looking forward to talking to Brandon Lee Gowton coming up next here on Birds 365. He covered training camp up close and personal right with John McMullen. So we'll get his take on the 16-day camp that the reporters saw in person, what his key takeaways were. and the expectations as we head into the September 6th game versus the Green Bay Packers. Stay tuned, everybody. Birds 365 will be right back with BLJ.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your greenhouse? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365, a Thursday edition, joined now by Brandon Lee Gowton of Bleeding Green Nation, one of the best in the business. BLG, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Doing good, guys. Glad that training camp is over.
Yeah, look, up in the step, BLG. Yeah, man. It's a grind.
Close to week one.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about, I thought it was interesting, the category you did with Brandon Smith, best player who's not going to make the team. I love that category. I might steal that from you, just to warn you. But I thought it was an interesting one, very athletic. I want Perry Nickerson.
Yeah.
I think he's got really no shot to make the team, but to me, he looks like an NFL player. But anyway, I just wanted to give you a hat tip for that. I thought it was interesting. I want to get the Saquon stuff out of the way because I feel, and I feel like I always bring this up with you because you're one of the open-minded ones who don't shout me down and call me a hater. And I'm constantly described as a Saquon Barkley hater, even though I constantly say he's a very good player.
Mm-hmm.
But I just haven't seen much from him from training camp. And oh, by the way, Brandon, I would defend him and say, well, you know, running backs generally, you don't see a lot from running backs in training. You can't get a feel for the running game and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, Kenny Gainwell's getting first team reps. He looks like the best running back that ever lived. And he's making plays all over the field. I didn't see that from Saquon. Did you see that kind of juice at the running back position from Saquon Barkley and you got to see the wheel route. I wasn't in Foxborough. You got to see that. Kenny was great yesterday. Is that hyperbole?
No, I think that's exactly been my point. When you have that contrast, and I'm glad you brought that up with Kenny Gainwell, and certainly the wheel route touchdown that Saquon did have in New England. Yes, that was a flash, but I think it was really like the biggest flash that I can remember. He's had some good runs here and there, but I was kind of waiting, for that practice at some point this summer where Saquon kind of just takes over, like Kenny Gainwell did on the final day of training camp practice. And maybe some of that is Saquon managing himself and not trying to, get too burnt out in camp. And I guess that's fair. But yeah, I would have liked to see just a little bit more. I don't think that's unreasonable. And also, I kind of wonder what's going on with Saquon, not trying to push the panic button, but, he leaves early on day 15. He's getting his back rubbed. And then on day 16, we think it's a load management kind of situation. But I saw Saquon like getting stretched out again by a trainer,
individual trainer.
Yeah, in a way that like I didn't remember seeing before. So it's just a little weird to me, a little something to monitor still.
Yeah, definitely going to be something to watch. BLG, I brought it up yesterday. I mean, it is a little concerning because I got asked, is it a concern that he left practice? And I'm like, well, I don't think it's a big injury, but you are talking about a guy that had 1,200 plus carries in New York in 6 years, 900 plus at Penn State, and he was the workhorse there. That's a lot of carries for a running back. It's going to be interesting to see how much of an impact he has on this team this year. You think that's going to mean that Kenny Gainwell has a bigger role maybe than we're anticipating?
I mean, even earlier in camp, like Gainwell is mixing in with the first team. Not to say that it's not going to be Saquon most of the time, but Kenny Gainwell is it's not like he's a total afterthought, and it's going to be like the days of old where, going back to like LaShawn McCoy is your number one running back. He's also your number two running back the way they would use him back in the day. It's not like you're heavily rotating those guys. I don't think it's going to be like last year when the Eagles didn't really like have a true top running back there. Certainly they didn't believe that going into the season, and that split was more, heavy with Kenny Gainwell and DeAndre Swift, and Swift eventually overtaking him. But like Kenny Gainwell's going to have a role here. Will Shipley has been involved. I think Saquon again is the majority leader there, but those other guys are going to play as well.
All right, since we are done, I want to get into some training camp awards from Brandon Lee Gowton. If I ask you, let's start with most improved. Where are you going? Who are you going with?
I think I'll go with Nakobe Dean. I think Nakobe, I had said entering this training camp through 2 years of watching him in training camp practice, never really did a whole lot to me to pop out, to stand out in a big way. And we all talk about the injuries, but I think beyond the injury, I never really saw a whole lot there to make me think, oh, this guy is a steal. And the Eagles did get him. They got one over on the league. It kind of looked to me more like, well, maybe there was a reason he fell to the third round at that point. And this year, I think he looked like a different player. He's been obviously really effective downhill. Still questions, I think, dropping back in the coverage and, his size limitations and his athleticism limitations. But I feel way more encouraged about him than I did entering camp.
All right,
go ahead, Johnny.
God, I just want to get through these awards.
Yeah, go ahead. You're good.
Kind of flip the coin. Biggest disappointment from BLG's perspective.
That's a good one. Do you have one, John, that you really like a lot?
Biggest disappointment in a weird way, I think it's CJ Uzomah. I came into the camp, there haven't been, and that's good, by the way. There's not a headlining biggest disappointment. But I came into this camp and I said, well, that's a veteran tight end. He played at a high level in Cincinnati, got a big money contract in the Jets. He's got to be better than Jack Stoll, right? And the Eagles have nothing to back up tight end. I like what I saw from E.J. Jenkins, but it's a receiver, trying to make the transition, receiver in college. Grant Calcaterra is your backup tight end. I thought CJ was like, that's a veteran guy who knows how to play. Nothing. Yeah. Nothing. And now he's gone. So that's who I off the top of my head.
I think that's fair. There are questions about, his profile as a pass catcher, but he couldn't even block. He was a bad blocker.
Yeah.
So I think it's just sadly, unfortunately for him, he just kind of seems to be done, and the injuries have maybe taken a toll on his career, and that's unfortunate. But I was thinking about Kenny Pickett just from a standpoint of,
that's a good one. That's a good one.
Didn't expect him to be, amazing, but I thought okay, he could be better than Marcus Mariota from what we saw last year. And I thought there was
I still think he's better, by the way, than Marcus Mariota.
I think as a passer. Yeah. But
and by the way, that doesn't mean he was good.
Right. I agree. And that's a low bar. But that, I thought we saw enough in the spring that made me feel like, okay, Kenny Pickett can do some things here. But as camp has gone on, and obviously the preseason games as well, I think he's been, even again, expectations have to be kept in check for a backup quarterback. You're not going to expect them to look amazing. They're backup for a reason. But I thought he could have been expected to look reasonably better than he did. And I thought he kind of finished camp on a low note, especially when he has a chance to make that big play at the end of practice to throw the ball to Ben Zimmer.
I'm by the way, I'm like, you got to be kidding me, Kenny Pickett. You can't make that throw.
BLG, tell everybody how good that route was from Ben Van Sumeren. That was freaking amazing.
Oh, it was amazing. Everyone in attendance was shocked that he was able to snap Andre Sam off him like that. And oh man, I know there's not a lot of chemistry there between Kenny Pickett and Ben Van Sumeren, but come on, you got to leave some air under the ball. Let him run under it.
It would have been interesting to see if Ben could have hauled it in, because that was
exactly. But he made a diving effort and he was still overthrown. Like, come on, you got to give him a chance.
The team would have exploded if that was completed. That was a fun little moment at training camp. I got fooled, by the way. It was Ben was doing a pass protection first in the 101 against Ty Davis Price, who's 35, and I thought they flipped them. I thought they flipped offense defense, and he was running against Ty Davis Price because Andre Sam's 35. So I got fooled. So I have to make my correction there. But that was a fun little way to end camp. And there's a guy in the conversation, probably lesser because he's mainly special teams. But I thought Ben Van Sumeren had a very good summer. Yeah. And I'll end the awards with, who do you think the best addition was early on? Could be a rookie, could be free agent. The best addition to this team.
I'm looking through my awards here. I'm trying to think if I'm talking about all new players. No one's jumping to mind. Is that a bad sign?
I don't think it's bad. I think it's an obvious one, and that to me, it's a first round pick.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'm gonna go. That's a good point. I was thinking about CJ, but I think Quignon. Yeah, that's true. Has been a really encouraging camp from a rookie. And speaking of those one-on-ones, had some nice defense there against AJ Brown late in practice, and also for as soft-spoken as Quignon is, publicly, we've heard about him,
he's
willing
awesome.
to mix it up. And on that rap after he defended AJ, he folded his arms and stared at AJ. And I think that's good. That's what you want out of a cornerback. Yeah. You want him to have that swagger, that level of confidence. And I think Quignon has that. And I think it's a great sign. I think some people have kind of taken why is he playing in the slot? That doesn't seem like a good sign. I think it's just the opposite. I think he's played at a level where the coaches want to find some way to make sure he gets snaps. And I think that's a good thing for him.
Yeah, they want him on the field. And the best, now it's very rare there's only two cornerbacks on the field. But when there are only two cornerbacks on the field, he's going to be on the field, it looks like. So, he'll be opposite Slay. And then when they need a slot corner, which is going to be 95% of the time against Green Bay, he'll move inside to the slot. But I think that's an important step to notice in the past few days, that he has been the guy when there's only two cornerbacks on the defense over Isaiah Rodgers and Kelee Ringo. So I think that's improved. Now, linebackers, BLG, we'll get past the awards. I noticed yesterday, and I wish I did this earlier, and I should have done it. I was thinking about it because everybody's hyper-focused on the guys, and I get it, who start the practice. And it's been Devin White and Zach Bond for 15 of the 16 practices. The only one it wasn't was in Foxborough for some weird reason. So 15 of the 16 days. But I noticed yesterday, and I didn't start counting until later I probably missed the first or second team drill. Nakobe got the most first team reps, just number wise. And I wish I would have focused on that a little bit quicker. Have you noticed that sea change? Do you see it coming? That Nakobe Dean's going to be a starting linebacker. It's just a matter of who's coming out, and that's mostly like going to be Zach Bond, I think, over Devin White.
Yeah, I think you hit on a key point there. Like sometimes we everyone as a collective we think about like starters and we focus on that label when that doesn't necessarily matter the most as much as the final snap count does. I think it's possible that Zach Bond and Devin White start games, especially early in the year, but then it is a situation where they're not necessarily the top two linebackers in that game, especially depending maybe on the game plan, that are finishing the game with the most snaps. In that case, what does starting really mean? I think the playing time is the ultimate telling thing. And I think that you kind of talked about it there, that there's going to be a rotation here. At least it seems like it based on how they've handled it in practice. And, I think it could be 4 guys playing between Devin White, Zach Bond, Nakobe, and then the way they've been treating Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I mean, he's been getting a decent amount of reps as well, including with that first team defense that I think, Vic obviously talked about ideally having 2 guys there. But again, the way they're handling it points to there's going to be a rotation at that spot.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out. BLJ, after 16 days of camp, does Vic Fangio have all the guys he needs on this defense to be a competent defense this year for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations?
I think so, yeah. I mean, again, the expectations have to be kept in check. We're not talking about the best defense in the NFL here, I don't think, but they don't have to be. They have to, like you said, kind of be competent. And I think it's Vic's job ultimately to get the most out of that group and have them outperform their talent level, which I think is certainly at a level where they should not sink the season like they did last year. I think we can say that will not be the case, or at least shouldn't be the case based on what we're seeing in camp.
Are you on DEFCON? Is it 1? Which is the worst, 1 or 5?
It's always confusing, right? Yeah, I think
1 is the worst, right?
I think
DEFCON. So. Are you on DEFCON 1 or DEFCON 5 with Jalen Hurts' interception?
It is, you're right. It is. I think 1 is the worst. Least severe is DEFCON 5. I mean, the season's over. Clearly, they can't recover from that Hurts interception.
And Slay baited him a little bit, which was interesting. The back and forth from those guys yesterday, but Jalen came back with about time, and he's right. It is very difficult to go through training camp practices that many when you're generally trying to press things and maybe try things that you wouldn't try in a game. And so it's been a very clean summer for Jalen Hurts. I think that's a very positive aspect for the Eagles offense. He seems more comfortable. I think the biggest thing, BLG, he's healthy.
Yep.
I don't know what was going on last year because he'll never admit it, but something was going on. And he looks like the juice is back and he looks healthy.
Totally agree. I mean, he looks just faster than he did last year, which I guess makes sense. Again, if he is truly healthy and isn't dealing with some kind of weird thing like he was last year. Yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Hurts had a really good training camp. To me, this was his best training camp. I thought he did a lot of good things as a passer in terms of getting the ball out faster, at least on average, than he did in the past. There were times where he still held it a little too long, but I feel like he didn't drift out of the pocket as much. I don't think there were a lot of 7-on-7 reps this year where he just ran the ball, which always infuriates me.
Yeah, that would frustrate I'm with you. That holding the football or running the football on 7-on-7 drives me insane. Just if you're not going to throw it, chuck it in the ground and get to the next rep.
Right. Yeah. What's the point? There's just no point in running. So I think he looks advanced to me as a passer. He looks faster to me as a runner. I feel certainly a lot more encouraged about him entering this season than I did entering camp.
Agreed, BLJ. It's tough I know it's tough to project this without seeing a game played, but through 16 practices, you were at each and every single one of them. Do you like the combination, the pairing of Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts? There was a lot made that it wasn't really Jalen Hurts' style of offense, what Kellen's ran in the past. Did you like what you saw in the 16 days of camp with Kellen and Jalen and the offense?
Yeah, I did, as it relates to, and Doug Nussmeier was talking about this too. What was it, John? Like the 2.3,
baby.
Yeah. 2.3. Oh, I think it shouldn't be like Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts shouldn't be. That's where like Tua is basically. For over the course of a season, he shouldn't be Tua over the course of an entire season. But you have to bring him back down to that somewhere closer to the middle of the pack and that average time to throw than where he was at the extreme end of the league, holding on to the ball too long. So I kind of like it from that standpoint of you're not going to, it's not about doing a 180, but it's about kind of bringing him back to the middle a little bit. As Nick Sirianni would say, a wise man avoids all extremes.
Wise man avoids all extremes except motion. Then he gets extreme.
Yeah.
I think Doug got taken to the principal's office when he said 2.3. It was like, whoa. Yeah, stop saying that. It's not going to be 2.3, but it's going to be better. And that's all you want, because I do think you want to try to take advantage of the strengths of Jalen Hurts' game, and you don't want to turn him into Brock Purdy, which I've said pretty consistently. And it looks like it's all positive right now from that standpoint. We mentioned a little bit with CJ when we were talking about CJ Uzomah. If they're going to add a position, I was pretty concrete, Howie, at the deadline or before the cut deadline, which is next Tuesday. I was pretty hardcore on wide receiver. Now we got to throw tight end to the mix, BLG. If they're going outside the organization, where do you think they're going? What position?
Well, I will say, Jack Stoll is still out there. Well, I mean, he's on the Giants right now, but
he's on the Giants, so he might get cut.
All reporting that I've seen from our Giants counterpart here, SB Nation Big Blue View, is that Jack Stoll's on the outside looking in New York. So, I don't know that you necessarily need to add him back to the roster, especially if he gets cut and there's an interest in him. But at the very least, you might be able to bring Jack Stoll back on the practice squad, and certainly that would give you some more depth there. I think they, it's weird because I think I like EJ Jenkins a lot. I don't know how much they trust him right away if they, truly believe in him as that number 3 tight end. I would think
made a lot of plays as a pass catcher. My
absolutely.
concern is I think you need a blocker, don't you?
I think he's shown good effort there, and I feel like hasn't been a liability there. But I don't know if they trust it yet.
Yeah. Any other positions besides wide receiver, or is that it for you?
Well, safety's weird because there's just a lot up in the air.
Yeah.
Like, are they going to cut James Bradbury?
Yeah, right.
Is Sidney Brown going to be ready? I mean, at this point, obviously Sidney Brown has missed all of training camp. He's going to miss all the preseason games. And I think, you look at the way I tweeted about this on Wednesday with him going on PUP, if he is kept on that list, in the regular season, he misses the first 4 games. The Eagles have that week 5 bye. So to me, it almost makes more sense to keep him on PUP because you kind of give him that extra week then, and then he is able to return in week 6, and then you can kind of really make sure you slow play that thing and not rush him back at all.
And then you also get Bradbury. You can kick the can down the road to the trading deadline.
Right. So, they added Caden Stearns. They seem to like him, but I don't know how close
not
he
even
is
healthy.
to playing.
I mean, I'm with you with safety in the fact that it's like at this point, I can't picture Brandon. I can't picture Howie waking up Tuesday and saying, "Oh, all right, I took it as long as I could. I'm going to cut James Bradbury." I can't picture that. So if he doesn't trade him, he's gone this far. I think he's going to keep him. And the injury aspect to Sidney, and they're going to play cautious with Sidney. So you start him on PUP, as you mentioned. I don't know what to think of Caden Stearns, but he's not ready. I'm sure Vic likes him, but he's not ready. So maybe you put him on IR. I don't know. But your thoughts on Bradbury? If you're taking it this far, are you really just going to wave the white flag on the last day and say, all right, I took it as long as I could? Doesn't seem like a Howie thing to do.
It's hard though, because he's getting first team reps as recently as yesterday. But he's not a safety. Like he's clearly not ready to just be a sure thing at that position based on what we've seen in the preseason. And I think
and he doesn't help on special teams
in the practices.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, he's played 3 special team snaps in the preseason. And if you're a backup safety, you got to play. I don't know any backup safeties who don't play special teams.
Yeah.
So I just struggle to really make sense of the roster spot there. But they're light on bodies, so they might just have to. But then if you keep them on week 1, I guess that doesn't matter. Salary's guaranteed anyway, except for maybe the extra $1 million. But I don't know. I just have a tough time still figuring that out.
I wonder if it's as simple as they release him once Sidney Brown is returned completely. Maybe that's when they move on from him at that point. And then you have Maddox and Brown at the backups, but we'll see what they end up doing with Bradbury. Someone else I want to ask you about BLG is the pass rush and Bryce Huff, but more broadly, the pass rush. It's one of the concerns of a lot of our viewers here on JAKIB Sports. In the chat, people talk about their concern about the edge rushers. Are you comfortable with that position group coming into the season?
Yeah, I'm feeling more confident in the pass rush leaving camp than I was entering camp.
Okay.
And I don't know how much of that is also maybe I should be more concerned about the offensive line. I think that's part of the equation there, but I don't think it's about it's not like about one player on that pass rush. I feel especially good about, as I think I've seen enough from the collective that I feel like as a unit, they might have enough juice to get that done collectively. Jalen Carter looks dominant.
Yeah,
Brandon Graham
destroying people. I think it is about one player. He's destroying people.
He is certainly the one. Yeah, if there is a one.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about just edge rushers specifically, I don't think there's one edge rusher that I feel particularly amazing about, as much as I think that unit has been able to show signs of life as a group. And if you rotate those guys, I think they can get it done. Bryce Huff showing that he looks like he could be ready for that bigger role. Josh Sweat looking like, okay, he's not maybe totally done. Brandon Graham certainly, I think, has juice left in the tank. Had a really good practice in his final training camp practice on Wednesday. Nolan Smith, inconsistent, but he hustles. And there's something there that I can believe in if he's maybe your 4th best edge rusher. Jalen Hunt apparently looks more ready than anyone would have possibly thought he would be to play, assuming he can get back healthy. So I think that unit, it's not going to be like, the best pass rush in the NFL, but I don't think we're going to be sitting here being like, this team has no pass rush juice at all.
At Brandon Gowton, make sure you follow BLG on the X platform. Read him at bleedinggreennation.com. Does a tremendous job there. Been all over the place in the preseason. We're lucky enough to get him weekly, filling in on Go Birds at times. PHLY doing a good job there when you're filling in. So big summer for BLG. I want to ask you about 2 players specifically, because you always hear this, and it's complete bullshit when you hear the NFL's a meritocracy. No, it's not.
No,
not even remotely. 2 players I feel have made this roster. Just if it was a pure meritocracy, they have made this roster. They deserve to be on this roster. One, we just talked about safety. One is Tristan McCullum.
Yes.
And one is Patrick Johnson.
Okay.
Did they make the football team?
I definitely think Tristan McCullum, with the question marks at safety, should be on this team. At the very least, I think you're getting a guy who clearly has some juice on special teams and can be a good backup in that regard. And safety, if you were talking about, a 4th safety option, I feel like you could easily do worse than Tristan McCullum, who, and that's another thing in the Bradbury conversation. Like, I think it would be tough to cut McCullum, who is not a sure thing, but neither is Bradbury. And also, there's a good chance that McCullum could be a better player in terms of there's potential there. Whereas with James Bradbury, I don't know how much potential really there is left for him. So I think McCullum absolutely should be on this roster. He's been active, flying around out there, physical, has made plays on the ball.
Very physical too.
Yeah. Energy, special teams. I think he checks a lot of boxes. And then Patrick Johnson, in the preseason games, especially, as we've seen, he's looked too good to cut. And another guy who can also help out on special teams there. I feel like you can never have enough pass rushers, as everyone always says. So I would think if Patrick Johnson doesn't make the Eagles roster, I mean, he's going to make a roster somewhere else, is the way I think about it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. He's definitely an NFL player. No question about that. So, but the numbers game is tough. You have to keep at edge rush. Can you keep 6? I mean, you have to keep 5. It's Bryce, Josh Sweat, Brandon, Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt. Can you afford to keep 6? And then the safeties. Yeah. There's so much uncertainty because of Bradbury, because of Caden Stearns. But McMullen is, it's one of those things like, I don't even know why you're bothering with Caden Stearns, because McMullen has looked pretty damn good.
Yeah,
I think. Those are some of the interesting ones. Anybody, I guess the preseason game week, what a mess. At least it's Saturday at 1. I think that's the most positive part of that. Anybody interested to see anybody jump over the hump for you that's going to play in that game?
I think Anaya Smith might have done enough recently. Not that
I'm saying just make a play. One play.
Yeah.
He's going to make the team.
Exactly. Yeah. I still don't think he's like ready to play at all this year.
No,
I don't think you can trust him to put him out there in a real kind of meaningful game scenario. But I think he's doing enough to cross that threshold of Howie Roseman not wanting to give up on a draft pick this early. And certainly a rough start to camp for Anias. Couldn't catch a cold out there, dropping everything his way.
Made a nice one-handed catch yesterday.
That was one of the best catches at training camp, in my opinion. Like, that was a shocking catch to be able to extend his arm. And it's not like he's a big guy either. Short arms, extending those in stride and making that catch. Anias, I think, again, still has a long way to go before he's able to play in a meaningful game. But I think he's doing enough here. And if he does, as long as he doesn't mess up in the final preseason game, I think will certainly strengthen his case to be on this roster.
I want to see Cooper DeJean. They said he's going to play. Yeah, he's a guy that hasn't been out there, so he's a guy I want to see. BLG, thanks for joining the show, man. We appreciate you being here. You always provide great insight, great coverage of camp, by the way. We followed it all off season long, so good stuff there. We'll talk to you next week. All right, BLG?
Thanks, guys. See you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
BLG joining us on Birds 365. He's great, Johnny Mac. I love getting BLG on. He does a really good job at covering this team, so it's always good to talk to him here on Birds 365. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll come back and we'll close out this Thursday edition of Birds 365. Stay tuned, everybody. Hit that like button, and we'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Win and save this baseball season from Colony Pools and Power Washing, a local company serving Delaware, Delco, and Chester County since 1970. Are you tired of looking at your green house? Is your roof, siding, deck stained green from algae and mold? Let the experts pressure wash your home and take the pressure off of you. Win with Colony Pools and Power Washing. Call them now at 302-762-2250. That's 302-762-2250.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
the greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to Thursday's edition of Birds 365, closing out the fourth show of the week. We'll have one more show tomorrow, back in our normal time slot again tomorrow, 8 to 10. Johnny Mac, training camps in the books, man. What's your final thoughts on today's Birds 365?
Training camps in the books, award season, Mr. Novacare. I should have asked the, undrafted class. There's no real clear defining Mr. Novacare. Typically, I thought it was going to be Johnny Wilson early in camp. Everybody loves those big receivers. And then he got the concussion, kind of fell back. I think it speaks to the fact that this is a good team, and there's not a space when you have a good team for surprises or guys at the back end of the roster. But two I just mentioned, Tristan McMullen, Patrick Johnson had really good camps.
I think Tristan's got to make this team, man.
Yeah, I mean, he deserves it, as I said, from the standpoint of, you can only keep 4 safeties. Reed and Chauncey are locked in, obviously, and then you would think Avonte Maddox has done enough when you add in his versatility to be that third safety. And that comes down to Howie. Does he want to give up on James Bradbury? Can he trade? Obviously, he wants to trade him. I mean, maybe he can trade him at this late stage in the game, and that would open up the spot for Tristan McMullen. But the presence of Caden Stearns, as BLG mentioned, is weird because he's got a history of with being with Vic Fangio. The Eagles signed him despite knowing he was injured and not ready to play. So, there's a lot of uncertainty with Caden Stearns.
Yeah, I don't know what he's going to be. He's a guy. You said he was limping when he got here. I don't know how much of a role he's going to have. That's where I'm like, Tristan McMullen should be that guy. But we'll see what they end up doing through as we prepare for the season here. Good show today, John. I thought Mike Gil was great. I thought BLG was great. I thought you were great in our 2 segments that we had. The viewers were great as well. If everybody could hit that like button. I was trying to get the 150 for Johnny Mac, but we are going to fall significantly short of that number, only at 114. Appreciate anybody that hits that like button. Johnny Mac, good show today, man. We will talk to you in the morning tomorrow. All right, brother?
Yeah, Football Friday, Saturday game this week. So we're getting closer.
Sounds good, brother. We'll talk to you tomorrow, and then we'll probably be doing a football 24/7 after the game on Saturday. I think it's a 1:00 game on Saturday, right?
1:00.
Yeah.
1:00, yeah.
All right, well, we'll be following that. I appreciate everybody in the chat. Hit that like button. Thanks for being here on this Thursday. We'll catch you tomorrow on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.